I'm joined now by David Pizzuto, Associate Director of Athletics and Sports Information Director for the College of Staten Island. David, thanks for taking the time. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, John. Thanks so much for the invitation. I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely, same here. So we were just talking off camera. You have a lot of important responsibilities in your role, and especially now in a pandemic, how are you adapting to that?
Well, I think it's been a process. I think the first part of the, adapting to it is more about getting used to being in my own comforts again. I mean, the one thing about working in collegiate athletics is that you really begin to call your work or your gym or whatever facility you're going to your second home because you're there kind of more often than you're at your own home. So I think it was just more about getting used to the fact, like not having to wake up at first thing is shower and get ready to for the drive in, and more about like how do I make things appropriate so that I can do what I was doing before here. And I think it's kind of evolved from there into more about like, well, how do we work it out now so that when we do go back, it is kind of seamless, that we can get back into a routine that we were used to, and bridging that gap as far as what it is we're actually doing and putting out there. Not having athletics, not having the competition part, has been pretty brutal for guys like us who kind of thrive on that stuff. But at the same time, there was still plenty to do, and there still is. And I think this whole process has really brought to light exactly what we do behind the scenes, because I think the competitive piece, when you really break it down, is just kind of like that icing on the cake. It's that little extra, but otherwise we're as busy now as kind of we ever have been. Sometimes for reasons that we didn't think were possible, but I think that's been the whole adaptation, is trying to adjust to that new world and to get ready for what's going to be a newer world when we do get back, because we will.
That's an intriguing point because we were just discussing how you had to recreate your office, your work office. You got to bring everything to your new home office. That way, like you said, it's as seamless as possible. And there's little things that you take for granted that you have at your actual office at work that may just fall through the cracks when you realize that you don't have them. It's like that old saying, you never know what you have till it's gone.
Right, right. Yeah, no, I noticed it right away with high performance computing. I work with a lot of graphic design type stuff. My laptop is a good one, but after a few weeks, it was getting slower and slower. It's hard to do something like this, like a Zoom call, while also working and typing up a draft for a memo, taking notes. It was a little tough. So you begin to miss that type of stuff, and yeah, you're right. And then there's always the camaraderie of your colleagues. My wife also works from home, and I love her to death, but she's not the same as a coworker. We could talk about what happened last night, with the wild card games or NBA basketball, whatever it might be. And there's that break of the day in that respect. And there's also a lot of distractions at home. It's really easy to kind of cut away for a quick snack, and the snack becomes 2 hours in front of the TV. And those are liberties that are sometimes nice, but sometimes it's like, I got to get back in there and get my work done. So I think it goes both ways, but it's true. I mean, there's a certain type of comfort to being at your workplace, and having that kind of tunnel vision while you're there that I wasn't getting here at first. And again, it's a slow adoption of new principles, new ways of doing things, and you just consistently adapt.
It's interesting too because this is not your first, second, or third time around this block. You've been doing this for going on 15 years now. And obviously, with everything in life, there's always evolutions and you have to do things differently. And now, especially technology has changed, I'm sure, from when you started back in 2006. But that's totally different. Now you're not even in office, you got to do everything from home. So, aside from those challenges, in terms of like the day-to-day grind and all the things and responsibilities you've had to do, what's changed since you started this role back in '06?
Oh yeah, I think just how we disseminate media has changed so much. I mean, you talk about 2006, but when I first started in athletics was back in the mid 90s. My first full-time sports info job, communications, was in 99 at the College of Staten Island. I was in my assistant's role back then. And, back then we didn't even have a website, you know, social media. There was like MySpace, maybe like back in the late 90s, early 2000s, but there was no such thing as Facebook or Twitter or anything like that. And now that's where people, that's their go-to, and it has to be timely. It has to be relevant. It has to capture an eye. It's got to be visual candy, otherwise people are just not interested in it. And so just the way we tell the story is a lot different. Back even like 2006, the whole storytelling was the major thing. You need a hook, you need a great piece, you need to have that human interest, and people were willing to dive in and listen to a story or read a story and get immersed in it. And nowadays that's a little bit different because you have to be in and out very quick, and then people are off to the next thing. And you have to be visually captivating, and you have to be able to be timely and relevant with the times. I lean a lot on our student athletes Instagram pages and Twitter accounts because I need to know what's cool. I've passed that point in my life. I'm 45. I used to be cool 20 years ago, and somewhere between then and now, I stopped being that. I stopped being relevant in terms of what the young people want. But I think I'm still dialed in because I learn a lot from looking at others. And I do still now like spend a part of my day or maybe a certain day of my week just kind of surfing and just kind of seeing what other schools are doing. And then I'll scroll by. And I did this the other day with the Northeast Conference. I'm scrolling through my Twitter and I saw something that just was completely awesome. And I reached out to the people there and I said, I don't know what you're doing on social media, but it's awesome. And I'm gonna copy it. You know what I mean? I'm gonna look at it, see if I can incorporate some ideas. So I think that's where things have really changed. And I think there's a lot more information sharing out there. There's a lot more to be learned online. My former assistant and I refer to YouTube as YouTube University, or University or YouTube. And we learn a lot of shortcuts, a lot of tricks, a lot. We're self-taught in a lot of areas for that. So 15 years ago, I would have had to attend, a seminar or a lecture course on how to properly use something like Photoshop or how to effectively write good hooks for Twitter. Now I could do that in 10 minutes just by looking at other people's pages. So I think that's really changed. Speed of business has changed a lot. And having to put information out there more timely, and the game day experience has also changed a great deal. Fan interaction, making sure live statistics, web streaming, everything like that has to be up to snuff. Otherwise, people are going to lose interest in your program simply because you're not offering what other schools can.
So that's actually a cool point that you brought up with the social media. You just mentioned a hook, and you can look at NFL, MLB, ESPN, Sports Center, all these sports accounts, and they have something that instantaneously you want to see because that's appealing. So where are you getting hooks, or what comes to mind? Is it just off the cuff when you see somebody make a really cool windmill dunk,
Mhm.
on your basketball team?
Right.
What comes to mind? How you're able to just put something very quick, concise, and appealing to an audience out there?
Yeah, I think the first thing is it has to be personal. I think if it's just like you said, some of it's visual. Sometimes you just see something and says, "Man, that's cool. We got to get it out there. We got to get it out there quick." Sometimes it touches you a little bit deeper than something else, where it's a story of a student athlete who's maybe doing something in the community, maybe doesn't want recognition for it. It's just something that they just mentioned to you in passing. "Oh, I did this yesterday." It's like, wait a minute, that's a story. There's a story there. Let's talk about it. Nowadays we have to kind of cultivate it because we're not seeing it as often. Games and contests are a perfect way to get that stuff. It comes to you. Something happens at the game, immediately you could turn it into a headline or a clip or something like that. But now that that's not there, you kind of have to cultivate your own. So some of the things that we've been doing is like, right now, our athletes have been kind of stationary and idle. They haven't been able to play with one another, practice one another. So it's about reaching out to them and saying, how are you staying motivated? What are you doing? So we've done a whole campaign about, inspirational quotes that our kids go to. What drives you? What makes you get up in the morning and go for an 8 mile run when you don't have to? And trying to get that out there to people. Also talking about what people are doing in response to COVID, whether it's in their communities, whether they have siblings or family who are first responders during a time like this, and making sure those stories are going out there, or making sure our team specific pages and social media are outlining those and are bringing those to light. And sometimes it's just about doing campaigns. Like we've been doing an I Chose CSI campaign, which tells the story of why kids specifically chose us over Wagner College up on the hill at Division I, or a powerhouse Jersey Division III school like Montclair State or Kane University, something like that. So we're trying to outline those stories and really get our fans into meeting the people behind our program and not necessarily the athletes behind it. What are their dreams? What are they looking to major in? What are they looking to do beyond college? Because that stuff is also very interesting. It's a side that we don't get to see often enough because we're so wrapped up in the day-to-day with competition. We also made the jump to Division II. So for our audience specifically, that's all new and that's all fresh, and that's like uncharted waters that we're navigating for the first time. So anytime we have things to focus on with our East Coast Conference, the new conference that we're in, we're looking to touch on that, or bring that to life. NCAA Division II, campaigns that they're doing, whether it's socially, whether it's competitively, we're looking to get behind and kind of bring those into focus. So I think it's an exciting time for our fan base because we do have new and innovative things going on, even without the competition piece.
What was the course of action that led you down this career path? Because you've had a very long and accomplished career path. You're still a young guy. You're a very young guy, but you've been doing it for a while. And obviously, this is something that you can do for a lifetime. So, what was the spark that said, hey, this is what I want to do in life?
Yeah. Well, thanks for saying that, John. And I appreciate the question. I think growing up, I loved sports, just like I was a sports junkie, just watching it. I love the broadcasting part of it. It's still my wheelhouse, what I love about it most. And I knew, like starting in high school, I knew that I wanted to get into the media some way, whether it was broadcasting or writing. I really loved to write, which was kind of weird for a kid my age sometimes. A lot of my friends hated reading and writing. I loved it. I loved writing papers for school. And I had that love, and I also had a love for sports. So I didn't know what exactly I wanted to do. I just knew I needed to be around sports in whatever capacity I was going to do it. And towards later in high school, I thought maybe journalism was the way to go. Being a newspaper reporter, my dream job was to report on the Giants. The New York Giants, my favorite team. And I think if I can land that job, I'd be set for life. And then something really odd happened. I was shooting hoops my senior year of high school. I went to the CSI gym over that summer. I was going to enroll at the College of Staten Island. And I was shooting some hoops over the summer, and I ran into a family friend of mine. And she had mentioned, she's like, are you looking for work when you come into college just to make a couple of bucks? I said, yeah, absolutely. I'd love to do whatever. I didn't even know what it was. She introduced me to a gentleman by the name of Sonny Grasso, who's like a local legend on Staten Island, former minor league baseball player. And he was in his twilight years at the college, and he was doing intramurals. And he's like, oh, I heard you want to work in sports. I said, yeah, whatever it is. So he got me involved right away. And at first I was like pushing a broom and working, being an attendant at games. And then the next summer, our softball coach left the job, and Sonny had a background in baseball and softball. And he said, hey, Dave, come with me to the softball game. I need somebody to keep the book. Okay, let's go. Dave, I need somebody to warm up our pitchers. Okay, let's go. So I became kind of his like de facto assistant coach, but I was doing all like the stuff that coaches don't want to do. I was preparing like the statistics. I was, breaking that stuff down. I was preparing like travel logs and things like that. And it kind of exposed me to everything that goes on a college campus. And I was like, you know what, there's this is a great job, like this is something that I can really pursue. And I just started asking a lot of questions, started volunteering for more and more stuff. And the college hired a gentleman by the name of Terry Small, who was a former SID at CSI. And we were at a basketball game, and he was doing like the public address announcing, he was doing the music for the game, he was keeping stats all at the same time. And everybody's obsessed with like what's going on in the court. And I was just fascinated just watching this guy. I was like, this guy's the coolest guy in the room, and you never think that of Terry, That's how I said that. But truthfully, he was like, that guy's a rock star. I would love to do what he does. So I introduced myself. I talked to him. We've ended up becoming, really good friends. And that's how I kind of got into it. It kind of just developed from there. I did leave CSI for a couple of years to take an assistant AD's job at Georgian Court in Lakewood, New Jersey. And being a part of that, they had just made the jump from NAIA to Division II. I was literally Laura Leisman's first full-time hire there after her. And it was great. Working there for 2 years exposed me to so much else that I didn't know college sports was about, eligibility and compliance, scholarships, playing in practice seasons, scheduling, recruiting. And then I was really lucky that my former mentor, Jason Fine, who was this position at CSI that I have now, he got elevated to the AD's role at CSI, said, Dave, I'd love for you to come back. This was 2 years later, 2006, and I've been back since. So that's a long story, but it's kind of like, it was never, I like to say it was meant to be, but I never had a path to it. I never, thank God I went to go shoot hoops that summer, because God knows what I'd be doing, So sometimes it's about that networking and just figuring out that there's something out there for you and pursuing it. And I've loved it. I've never really worked a day since.
What's the biggest challenges of being an AAD and slash SID?
Yeah, I think one of them is that you never know what's going to happen. COVID's a perfect example. I joke with my boss and saying, what happened? You didn't go to AD school to handle a pandemic? How can you not have the answers, right? But it is true that when things happen that are unexpected, people do look to you for answers. Coaches do look to me to say, Dave, what do I do? And you don't have a guidebook for something like this. And COVID's just one example, but there are other examples too, having a problem with a parent, or, I can't instill discipline on this person, or, we might not qualify for nationals because of this, or an eligibility question. And, I think those are the real challenges, is that there is, some of it is a little bit of guesswork and a little bit of like having to go through it in order to learn best practices, because there is no kind of operations manual. There's professional development you can receive. There are people you can talk to, and there are great people in this profession that always will offer advice. But there is no roadmap. So I think that's one of the challenges. The other challenge is that with sports information, I'm really comfortable. I'm not a great broadcaster. I'm not the world's best statistician, but I'm comfortable enough in myself that I can do those jobs. I can wake up and feel totally comfortable. But, I might have to be a part as an AAD of, some kind of committee on campus where, maybe I'm not that comfortable. Maybe I don't know all there is to know about reopening COVID, or, pluralism and diversity, or, some of these other committees that I'm on. And it's like, well, my job here is to kind of soak up as much information and then try and do something with that and try to offer something with that. I began teaching at CSI in 2012. First I taught English, because that was kind of my wheelhouse as an undergrad and a grad student. And now I'm teaching sports management. And, there's 30 kids in the room who are looking at you to be an expert. And the first time I walked into a classroom, I was nervous. And I was like, what the heck am I doing here? I don't know what I'm doing, But again, so those are kind of the challenges. You get immersed into these things that you're not really built for, or you've never really had enough training with. But over time, you surround yourself with good people. You try to institute as best practices as possible while you're doing it, and things sort of land okay. I think the other big challenge is having those tough conversations. Sadly, we've had to let people go in our building, whether it's for budgets and necessity of that, or poor performance, and those are tough. People like me, who I think are generally nice by nature, we don't want to have that conversation. I sometimes wish my boss would have that conversation and leave me out of it. But those are some difficult things that you have to do sometimes. And, you don't really get prepared to do those either, but you learn.
Absolutely. So something that I really found amazing is you guys were a D3 school,
Mhm.
especially basketball. We discussed it earlier. The team's really good, and you were able to elevate the sporting program to D2. That's pretty impressive. How were you able to do that? What went into that, and what kind of things did you have to navigate
Sure.
around?
Sure. Yeah. I think my boss says it really well, Charles, that, when we really investigated whether or not we'd be a good fit for Division 2, we kind of realized that we're not exactly a great fit for Division 3. Our facilities alone, I mean, you see our gym behind me, but our outdoor facilities, especially in the conference that we were playing in, the CUNY Athletic Conference, we just look different. We just look like a school that's built for Division 2. Having residence halls on campus within a city university is very rare. It's not really common. So we felt like we just kind of looked like a Division 2. And then I think operationally, we made the move little by little to full-time coaches. Back when I started in 2006, we only had one full-time coach. Now all of our coaches are full-time or three-quarter time, and that's a big difference when you have coaches who are there recruiting and breaking down films, scouting, scheduling, and all have other duties within your facility, whether it's facility operation and maintenance, game day management, whatever it might be, compliance, finance. It allows you to do more. It allows you to be a part of something bigger. Our president, William Fritz, was the one who really catapulted the move, got us to really think about it. And it kind of dovetails with the college's strategic plan of welcoming more scholarship-based education, making us a destination campus for local and kids from out of state and abroad. Really prioritizing progress towards degree and graduation rates. And I think like we kind of fell into that kind of a jigsaw puzzle before, but this kind of was our driving force to get with it. As far as the protocols for entering, the NCAA throws a lot of stuff at you. A lot of self-study that they want you to undergo. There's some financial points that you have to hit on, whether it's awarding scholarship, being able to sponsor a certain amount of teams for a certain amount of games, things like that. So we just felt like we were a good fit. And then the only way to enter a different division is you have to have sponsorship from a conference. So the East Coast Conference, it was kind of a good marriage because they had one of their schools, LIU Post, was leaving. They were going to merge with LIU Brooklyn for the Division 1 program. So they were kind of actively seeking new membership, and we were kind of there like, hey, we'd love to be a part. And so it was a really good marriage. It was a really good coming together. We felt like we checked a lot of their boxes. They felt like we checked a lot of theirs, and they checked a lot of ours. So, it was kind of a natural progression. It was quick. It came on really strong, really fast. But I also think that we were ready athletically. We have to make a jump athletically. You mentioned basketball. We've always been a great Division 3 basketball program. To think that we're just going to walk in and be a great Division 2, that's lofty a goal. But we really feel like we can be competitive right away. And battle for championships pretty quickly after a full recruiting class comes in. So we felt if we didn't think that our programs could compete at that level, we probably wouldn't have made the jump. But we do feel like we can be competitive in all of those facets. We have great staff. We have a great athletic director. And really it starts from the top down, and they were the ones who really pushed it. And once they said go, we were ready to go.
How have you adapted the school's athletic program amid the 2020 pandemic? There's had to be a ton of challenges and loopholes and so many things you, as well as everybody else, had to go through.
Right. Well, I think I'm going to use a cliche, and that is like you can only control what you can control, right? I mean, what's within our control is making sure that we have good people in place, whether it be student athletes. So you still have to recruit. You still have to make sure that those student athletes are doing what they need to do in the classroom. Basically you still have to operationally make sure that you can support your programs. And the biggest way we do that now with the kids is scholarships. So we still have to show that we can award scholarships. So all the systems continue to go. The only thing that we're really missing is the competitive piece. And for our fall and winter sports, the practice as well, the organized team activity. But in lieu of that, you talk about adjustment is how do you keep those kids involved? How do you keep those kids properly trained mentally and physically when you can't see them, when you can't touch them, when you can't access them? So we've had to develop a lot of virtual programs, whether it be virtual fitness with our strength and conditioning coach and our athletic trainer, and other things virtually, just communications wise, compliance meetings, getting to know you, just general Q&A, workshops for parents of new athletes in our program. So we've had to do that. That's been the major adjustment. But I think what's, this kind of, I hate to say it's a good thing because it's not. We'd rather be out there playing, but this pause is not altogether a bad thing for us. It's kind of nice to be able to kind of push the reset button a little bit, kind of take a breath, kind of figure like, are we really doing this the right way? Like there are some things that we've been looking at in our program that we say, this gives us a nice chance to kind of, analyze what it is we've been doing for these last 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Can we be doing it better? Financially, are we, obviously everybody's bearing the brunt of a budget crunch amidst COVID. We're saving a lot of money because we're not traveling our teams, we're not outfitting our teams, we're not paying for officials and things like that. But at the same time, it gives us a chance to kind of, hey, how much money did we spend last year in this? Could we spend a little bit less now that we're forced to? Can we adopt these changes forever? So a lot of our time is spent kind of looking at things that we've done. And I don't know if we would have had the chance to do that if it wasn't for COVID. Having this little bit of a break has allowed us to do that. And we've done it with staffing too. Not necessarily the actual people, but about like, hey, how do we maximize our assistant coaching lines? How do we get the most out of people when they're working from home? What are some things that we can do to keep engagement up, things like that. So it's been a learning process for sure, but and adjustments all the way around. But it's not the worst thing that's ever happened. Although we would trade it all in a second to go back to the way it was.
It's definitely awesome that you were able to discover new opportunities and really turn this entire thing to your advantage and really do some self-reflection because all your sports programs are halted. This I found very interesting and something I absolutely wanted to ask you. Your entire sporting program got shut down, except for one team, e-gaming, esports. Tell me about that because I think that's hilarious, but it's a really booming part of honestly everywhere because now there's 2K leagues, video games have become gigantic for this generation, and it's really becoming something of a pivotal part of all these leagues and major networks like ESPN and Fox Sports and such.
Yeah, I actually had the same conversation with our assistant commissioner with the ECC on a podcast that we do at CSI. And we were talking about how we wouldn't be surprised if the NCAA does get involved with esports sooner rather than later, because there's a lot of money that's floating around in it, these expos and these, these gaming, events that are getting held are just attended by millions virtually and tens of thousands in person. There's definitely an appetite for it. I think for us, what COVID did was just accelerate it. I mean, we had a gamers club at CSI, and then once we knew that we were shut down like March, April, it's like, well, how do we get these guys matriculated to a point where we could start being competitive quicker rather than drawn out a little bit more? And again, being at home allowed us to kind of have kids play from the comfort of their own home. We didn't need necessarily a computer lab or an esports arena on campus to do this, which is usually a prerequisite for getting it going for most campuses. So, again, COVID kind of helped us along with that. I thought it was great. I didn't know much about the esports games themselves that we participated in. Overwatch, Valorant were the two games that we participated in it, but we have a staffer, our assistant athletic director, Alberto Sanchez, is a recreational gamer in his own right. So it was kind of right up his wheelhouse. So he kind of took, ownership of it, developed student coaches and captains to kind of lead the teams. And we did really well. We won an ECC championship in Valorant, and we would think came in we were in third or fourth in Overwatch out of eight teams that played. And what I learned, honestly, John, about some of the athletes that play is I developed a lot of respect for them. There's something to be said about somebody going on the computer using, a mouse and a keyboard and doing what they're doing as high performing as they were. We're talking about 500 to 1,000 keystrokes a minute of action. And, some people say, well, you don't have to be athletic and this and that, but some of our esports gamers would practice, 4 and 5 hours a day. And, it's hard to develop chemistry in a lot of these esports games when you're doing it remotely. You and I, John, can go on a video game right now and try to be a good team and, I don't know, Madden, Call of Duty, whatever it is, you name it. But it's hard to do when you don't know the person that you're playing alongside. You have to develop a certain speech and a certain language. You have to work in unison. There's a lot of mirrors to kind of real physical sports. And I developed a lot of respect for those kids who did it. And they were great kids. They loved it. They represented our campus really well. And we're getting set to do it again in the spring. We're going to have a League of Legends team, a Rocket League team. And so I'm excited for them because it thrust them into the spotlight. It made them a part of what we do. And it was the only in-game stuff I was writing about. So when we did a news release for one of our first games, Alberto was like, Dave, what the heck? This is awesome. I've never read anything like it. I'm like, well, because this is it. You're the only show in town. I'm going to really donate a lot of resources to it. So it was great. We had a really good time with it. And again, I think we have some well-deserving kids who are very, very talented who are doing it. And I have a lot of respect for it.
What kind of talks? What are the conversations for all the sports to resume in 2021?
Yeah, well, we're having them right now, to be honest. We're really hoping to get back to play sooner rather than later. And by sooner, we're talking about the next, 2, 3, 4 weeks. Once we start turning the page in February, a lot of our spring sports are outdoors. So all of our spring sports are outdoors: baseball, softball, outdoor track and field. And the hope is to get the winter sports like basketballs and the indoor sports to practice during that time. But really what the outdoor sports allow us to do is allow us to kind of implement proper social distancing and protocols with testing are now coming more and more into focus now that it's more and more readily available. We still are 2 months out from real competition, more than 2 months from real competition in baseball, softball. We're talking about the tail end of March, 1st April. The weather's going to start to get nicer. We're now hearing more and more about vaccinations. And, we've been kind of tied, to be honest, John, to a lot of state and city guidelines of just regarding reopening of major facilities. Our pool has been shut down by order of the city and state, just because of sheer amounts of people who can really be in there. And also the City University of New York, it's all their facilities really. And there has to be some uniform guidelines on getting people back into those places and spaces. But we're developing now reopening and reentry plans, the phasing in of athletic activity. So it's not like we're going to welcome in a group of 30 baseball players who haven't done, a lick of training, at least, on a team perspective. It's not if we're all going to say, all right, come on, take the baseball diamond and go play. It's about welcoming them back little by little, smaller pods of kids, 5 to 10 kids at a time, specialized instruction, getting their strength and conditioning back up to speed to what they need, especially baseball, softball. We're talking about players that play, 40 games in like a month. So they play a lot. You got to make sure that they're not going to break down easily and that they're well prepared to get in there. So that's a kind of like a slow burn, getting them back into game shape. And then hopefully by early April, we're back. Might not be open to fans, might be very restricted with our scheduling, but they were the ones that got displaced last year. So they've become kind of our first priority for this year. The other sports did get their seasons in last year. So again, we're working on that now. We're hopeful. We're trending in a good direction. But listen, tomorrow we can wake up and find out that our skyrocket, testing and has yielded too much of an outbreak, and then we're shut down again, or we're put in an orange zone or a red zone, and then we're done for. But we can only control what we can control, right? So we're doing our part to kind of get us back out on the field to play, and I'm really hopeful that we're going to be out there playing again in April with baseball, softball, and outdoor track.
Pizzuto, I really appreciate you taking the time today. It was a pleasure speaking with you. And I'm excited to see CSI, especially the basketball team, and now the esports get going. I appreciate everything that you're doing and keep it up. And I hope to talk to you again really soon. Thank you again.
Absolutely, John. Best of luck to you going forward, and I really appreciate the conversation. It was great.
David Pizzuto, thank you very much.